Welcome to Everything CPA and Private Equity, where we unpack the evolving relationship between accounting firms, private equity, and other strategics. I'm David Wolfskehl, a partner at Whitman Transition Advisors.
And I'm Phil Whitman, CEO of Whitman Transition Advisors. And we've chatted with more than 150 private equity groups. We've actually closed over 40 transactions with those private equity groups. And we're bringing you firsthand insights from the front lines.
And whether you're exploring your first deal, putting your toe in the water, refining your strategy, we're here to guide you with real stories, expert advice, actionable takeaways. Let's dive in. Welcome, everybody. So excited for our initial episode of Everything CPA and PE Private Equity. And the reason that we start this podcast is we just came back from the Accounting Today PE Summit. And a couple things that we both knew and learned. So much interest, so much activity, and so much need for additional education. And so we're here over these next episodes to teach you what's going on, to teach you the terms that people talk about, bring value as you start exploring on your own journey. We'll have special guests, and we have one on today already. And we're very excited to start this journey with you. So my name is David Wolfskehl. I'm one of the partners at Whitman Transition Advisors. I'm also going to introduce Phil Whitman. So Phil, why don't you introduce yourself actually?
Thank you so much, David. Phil Whitman, CEO, Whitman Transition Advisors. And wow, what a conference. I will tell you, I think it was the best conference I ever attended, as well as presented at. It was just wonderful being a co-host. Thank you to Accounting Today for putting the whole thing together with me and our co-hosts. What I can tell you is there's so much interest that's been generated from this very topic. Never before did I sit in a room where it almost seemed like people were hanging on with bated breath, regardless what the topic was, just really trying to be sponges and soak up all that information. So because there's so much to be learned, and because we've been on this journey for well over 3.5 years, what I can tell you is you're looking at a team of experts at Whitman Transition Advisors, and we're here to help you understand exactly what's going on.
And also our special guest for this episode is Terry Putney. He's also part of the Whitman Transition Advisors team and was part of the PE Summit as well. So Terry, welcome.
Thanks, David. I want to echo Phil's comments that I've been going to conferences now for well over 40 years, and it's the best one I've ever attended. And every significant player in the PE world was there. Lots of our clients that we're working with that are in the middle of deals, clients that were curious about what's going on, firms that we've already done stuff with were there. It was amazing. I think I probably knew well over half the attendees that were in the room, and personally, which breaks a record for me. And it was really a terrific conference and very, very informative. And Phil, being one of the co-presenters, did a terrific job, I would say, as well. So,
thank you, Terry. It was so exciting that literally one out of 4 conference attendees had dinner either with Phil or Terry, myself, or David Kells, and that was awesome to see that ability to reach people, ability to touch people, and it was great hearing the conversations and the energy in those rooms. So let's get to some things here, some questions. So Terry, one of the things that we also learned or heard, we knew this, is so often firms will say, so what's the multiple? And that is certainly a piece of the questions that they should be asking, but that's just the piece. Why don't you share some insights into what are the other questions they should be thinking about?
Sure, David. So, I've been involved with the M&A of accounting firms now for 26 years. And, for the first 23 of those years, maybe even 25 of those years, The question was always when I did a webinar or spoke at a conference, what are CPA firms going for now? What's the multiple? And of course, we were referring at that time to the multiple of revenues. And now the question is, what's the multiple? And now the difference is, what's the multiple of EBITDA? But it's the same answer in that, it really depends on who you're talking to. I could tell you that it's a 6 or it's an 8 or a 10 or a 5 or whatever. And that tells you just a small little piece of what you need to know about what that really means. It really depends on who you're talking to. And there's so many other things that go into the terms of the deal and also the firm that you're affiliating with. What's it going to, nobody is buying a CPA firm to watch you walk off into the sunset immediately. You're going to have a relationship with each one of these PE, whoever you do a deal with, and what that looks like and what your role is going to be and how that, what kind of compensation you're going to have after the deal is huge. And so, there's the obvious things like how much of the proceeds would go into rollover equity and how much would not go, how much is going to be pure cash, how much is the down payment, how are they going to treat working capital?
I couldn't help but interject, Terry. And is that rollover equity going into Topco, or is it being invested at the local level?
Right, exactly. And then what are the terms of the rollover equity? In some cases, rollover equity can be almost half of the proceeds. Most of the firms are working with somewhere in the range of 30 to 10% rollover equity, and then there are some that don't do any at all. But what are the terms of that rollover equity? So there's just
Terry, I think, look, for some of our listeners, they're at the beginning of the journey. And why don't we even define for them what is rollover equity and what does it mean and why is it important? And obviously some groups offer rollover equity, others don't. Some are at Topco, some are at local level. Let's first define for everyone, what is rollover equity?
Okay, so if I establish I'm just going to use an arbitrary number. If I establish the value of your firm at $10 million, however we got to that number, there's going to be, how is that going to be paid to you? And, there's going to be a down payment. I think the down payment you should expect is usually never less than 40%, but sometimes it's as much as 80%. And then how much of the rest of the proceeds are going to be paid to you in deferred payments? And are those contingent? And then part of the proceeds might be in the form of rollover equity. And that means we're going to ask you to accept, rather than being paid cash, we're going to ask you to accept an investment in our ongoing business as part of your proceeds. So if I say the value of your firm is $10 million, and I ask you to take 20% rollover equity, that means $2 million of that proceeds is going to be an investment in, as Phil's mentioned, either the overall company that's being created, or in some cases, in just your company, that the successor of your company locally. So, normally there's a new business started, and if we roll your business into that, and you're running that business with the PE firm, your rollover equity might be just in what your firm does, as opposed to, in some cases, Topco, where we have, say, maybe 30 or 40 different accounting firms that have been pulled together, and your rollover equity is going to be in the umbrella company that owns all those 30 or 40 firms. But, beyond that, you've got all kinds of other issues that come into play. I mentioned the working capital. That's a big issue. Normally, in most of the larger PE deals, your accounts receivable and work in process and other components of working capital are included in the valuation that's used to buy your firm. So if we said that your firm's worth 10 million, and you've got, say, $1 million of working capital in your firm, that $1 million gets thrown in with the rest of your assets. But in some cases, in some firms, they're actually paying they're buying your working capital from you. So when somebody says I'm paying you 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times EBITDA, you really need to know a whole lot more than that before you really understand what kind of value you're getting. And then even beyond the financial terms, it's really important to understand the model that the PE firm is using. What are they trying to build, and what's your role in it? And what's your responsibility for helping them build that? In some firms, they've already got, what they need and what they're trying to do is just add on more breadth and depth. And so they want to add you in, and they want you to just keep operating the way you are. In other firms, they want you to really drive growth. They want you to be a leader in building a national or regional platform. There's a big difference between those two. And understanding who you're talking to and what they're looking for is a really important part of evaluating, the overall opportunity that you're being presented.
And I think the overall opportunity also starts with chemistry and culture, right? And, I think at the core, it begins with that. And sometimes all these other things make that seem less important. But if you're going to be around, it's going to be more important over time.
And David, let me throw something else in. This is something that I think is really important about the way we approach things. When a firm comes to us, or we talk to a firm that has an interest in potentially going to find out more about what might be available to them in the PE market, we spend time with them up front talking about it generically. We're not just going to throw your name at firms and say, hey, let's see what happens. We're talking to you about what it is that you're looking for, why are you interested, and what kind of a PE firm would be the right one for you to talk to. And because we have, roughly 40 or more that we're working with actively, and we've talked to almost 150, we have a really, really good understanding of the range of opportunities out there, so that we're not wasting your time and you're not becoming disappointed because you're not hearing what you're hoping to hear that will address the issues that you're trying to address.
And, one of the PE firms I met with at the summit, they said, we like when you send us something, it's the right thing for us. It's a good fit rather than shotgunning it and sending it to everybody. So, and that's why it's so important that we invest that time to know the PE firms, to know what their deck is, to understand what their model. And so talking about knowing PE firms, I think between the two of you, but I'm going to pass it to Phil, you've met with 150 plus firms. The whole team has probably seen 30 to 40 presentations by PE firms. So, but we talk about PE firms, and that's really not the right label. So why don't you talk about a little bit of the different flavors? And is it really one definition or what that could be?
So it's interesting. Obviously, we refer to like Baskin Robbins, so many different flavors. This is an arena, the public accounting profession, accounting firm, tax preparation firms, office of the CFO, that has become so desirable for what I'm going to say strategic investors, whether it's private equity. We've got family offices. And you know what? Family offices, typically have no hold period. They're long holders. As a matter of fact, I had lunch today with one of our new clients, and they are a family office. And they're looking at this for the next 20 or 30 years. And they've got outs. I said to him, well, what are you going to do if you've got a partner that has gray hair? And, he wants out sooner. They have means of getting those folks out. But so you got family offices, you got wealth management platforms. And we've done transactions with wealth management firms, and they see the convergence of tax and wealth planning into the future. And probably that will be the competition for the traditional CPA firm, is that someone wants to go somewhere where they can both have their taxes and their wealth planning done, and in one fell swoop. So we've had conversations with pension funds, bank holding companies, publicly traded companies. At one point, I was working with someone that had a shell company, and they were thinking about doing a reverse merger into a public company and putting a CPA firm in there. I mean, there really has not been a shortage of folks that are interested in coming into the profession. So it could be kind of confusing. I always say it's not about the money until it's about the money. Now, all of these folks are going to generate some nice pots of cash up front and back end options. But as we look at them, there are definitely differences. You've got private equity groups that typically are going to be 3 to 5 and then a turn. And the one thing that I don't understand is sometimes a firm says to me, yeah, but in 5 years, I don't know who's going to own me. I think they're looking at it the wrong way when they say, I don't know who's going to own me. I think it's really, I don't know who my new partner is going to be. I don't know who the new capital stack is going to come from. But I will tell you, even in conversations I've had with large firms, one of the big 3 that did it. So that means it's either Towerbrook, Parthenon, or New Mountain. But I've had conversations with managing partners from all of those firms. And one of them said to me, I have the ability to bring the next suitor to the table. This is the managing partner speaking. It's not like private equity is going to cram it down their throat. This is the one that you're doing the deal with. It's a process.
Phil, I think it's important. You said something I want to emphasize that, when the firms we work with that are looking at maybe a relationship with private equity, they think of themselves as selling oftentimes. But that's not what the private equity firm says. They say, I'm investing in a partnership with this firm. Now, they recognize that some people will be there longer than other people, but they don't see it as a buy. They see it as a investment, and they see the relationship going forward as a partnership. And I know legally it maybe looks different than that, but that's really what it means. And they understand that all the assets go up and down the elevator every day, as they say, meaning it's a people business, and we need to be looking at it that way. And I'm getting some Terry, background noise here, David. I'm gonna mic off.
So you're absolutely right, Terry. And I've actually started when I speak with clients, I don't say XYZ private equity just bought ABC CPA firm. I say ABC firm has just taken an investment by private equity. This truly is a partnership model. And unlike in the early, days of this, Terry, back when you sold your firm, back then they had it wrong. They would buy 100%, and that truly was a sale. And it was never talked to the firms in the fashion of, we're making an investment in you. So I really think, words and what you say and how you say them are so important. And that's a message for the private equity groups that are out there, because one word said the wrong way can absolutely derail a deal. And here, I'll give you a tip. I was working with a managing partner of a firm, and the PE guy said to the managing partner, who was all in on doing a potential transaction, he said, so, you've been sort of not having to answer to anyone for, your entire career. You built this wonderful firm. How are you going to feel having a boss and having to answer to me? Well, that went out the door.
When we get done with here, I want to hear who that was.
So after we stop recording, so this was so amazing. This is our first episode of Everything CPA and Private Equity. And both at the summit and literally today, we probably could speak for another 4 or 5 hours and just start scratching the surface of the issues, the things we know, and the education that we can offer. So, Terry, big thank you for being part of our initial guest. And, you're awesome in the value you bring. Phil, this is very exciting. We're going to continue down this process. So, everybody, crush your day. Everything CPA and Private Equity. Subscribe, listen, and thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you for tuning into Everything CPA and Private Equity. Every episode brings fresh insight. However, there's always more to talk about.
Don't miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you watch podcasts. Have a question or topic you'd like us to cover? We'd love for you to reach out to us.
Together, we will help you navigate this dynamic landscape so that we can help you achieve your goals. Until next time, keep making moves that matter.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.